Welcome to the Redeemer Network podcast, where we talk church planning, church health, and multiplying churches for the sake of the gospel. To learn more about the Redeemer Network, visit redeemernetwork.org. All right. Well, welcome back to the Redeemer Network podcast. This season, we're talking about what we do as a network. We have three priorities as a network: training, funding, and support. And in our previous episodes, we've discussed how we train leaders for both church planting and church renewal. And today we're going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, funding. My hope for this episode is to make this more entertaining than your typical church finance team budget meeting. And so that's why I've brought on two big-time guests today. I'm joined by Brandon Barker and Josh Reeves. Welcome, guys.
Thanks. Well,
Yeah, good to be here.
glad to be here.
I'll just introduce you. Brandon is the executive director of the Redeemer Network. Before jumping in and serving the network, he served in pastoral ministry for 16 years and still in many ways is serving in pastoral ministry as you're serving, helping with Redeemer Georgetown, providing some leadership there. And then Josh Reeves is the partner and content director for ChurchBiz, and he was the founding pastor of Redeemer Round Rock, and so served on staff as a pastor from our start in 2011 to 2022, served as a lay elder, and still hanging around as a partner.
Still here.
And so thankful for that. So before we jump into this conversation today about funding, I was thinking about this morning. There's a lot of really exciting stuff going on right now. We've got, at the time that we're recording this, we've got a hub training, a retreat for our residents this weekend. We'll be training them on missional church. Excited about that. We've got an assessment conference coming up for some of our soon-to-be church planners that we're sending out. I've heard a rumor. I don't know if this is true. Maybe producer Kyler can verify this, but I think there's a Redeemer Network music project in the works right now.
There is.
Okay. Kyler says, yeah, that's exciting. Our conference is coming up in the fall and plans are in place. So just a lot of exciting stuff. School's out for the summer. NBA playoffs are happening right now. It's a good time. So I thought we'd start this way. What's got you guys excited right now? What's going on?
Can I jump in first?
Yeah, go for it.
So I was excited about your original icebreaker, which was 95 Rockets versus 26 Spurs.
Yeah.
We'll save that for another day, or maybe later if this crashes
tanks,
and we need something to
we need some
pick it up.
content. Yeah.
I'm excited about all the things you just mentioned. We have our assessment next week. I love that time. We're doing our first retreat as part of a residency as we pivot part of our training this year over the next couple of days. Excited about that. The music project, one of the things that's been really fun to watch, I know you've got a separate episode. I don't know if you've recorded that yet or you're about to. One of the things that's been really fun to watch is a lot of our churches start writing their own music.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed like this is something that the Lord is stirring in our churches. And we went, okay, how can we be a part of that and really kind of organize it a bit and put some resource behind it? I would love for the day to get here when we're at our conference singing all Redeemer music, songs by Redeemer churches for Redeemer churches. That'd be a lot of fun. But if we're talking about what's got us excited today, it's my anniversary, and so I cannot pass up on that one. 21 years today.
I would put the ball on the tee for you right there.
You did,
so
man.
Good job.
You did. Amanda, I love you. Happy anniversary.
If she's listening to a podcast on funding.
She is not.
Josh, what about you?
Yeah, well, I'm excited about all that going on with Redeemer Network. Personally, just married our oldest daughter last week, got her married and did that wedding. So that was
Big
exciting.
deal.
And my wife just graduated from UT nursing school. So sorry to all our tech fans that she went to UT, but it was close. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, good stuff, man. A lot to celebrate. All right, well, so we'll start here. I was telling my wife that I was recording a podcast episode today on church funding, and she literally laughed out loud at me. Not sure anybody's gonna be that interested in this, was her take. But church funding is no joke. That's the reason that it's one of our three priorities. We train, we fund, we support. If we're going to fulfill our mission as a network to advance the gospel through multiplying healthy churches, we need good thinking and good strategy on funding. Churches' mission needs money. We need resources. So, Brandon, I'll come here to you. We'll start there. Why is funding so critical to our mission as a network?
Yeah, so let me answer that from two sides. Let me answer that from the side of the church or sending churches, and then the planter. From the side of the sending church, I would say this: to answer that question, we've got to back up and ask this question: why do we plant churches? Why do we do this? Why do we fund church multiplication, the planting and the renewing of churches? Why do we do that? And to take from Tim Keller, who we've all learned so much from, Tim would say this, or he said this in 2015, that church planting is the best strategy we have for reaching new men, women, children, unchurched people, non-Christians with the gospel. He would say that new church plants on average reach 3 to 6 times more likely to reach new people than existing churches. And so church planting at its core is an evangelistic missionary endeavor. And it's the best shot we have at reaching new men, women, children. Not the only shot, but the best shot. And then, and then the other side is what he said is that it's the best thing we have to see existing churches renewed, strengthened. All of us want to see all of our people bought into the mission of God. The best way to lead people deeper into the mission of God and see their lives lived out on mission is to model it by multiplying churches and church planting in your church. And so if you're leading an established church, the best way you can get your people on mission, plant a church. And then to the church planter side, I'd say this: we want our planters to be missionaries. We don't want to fund everything, and I know we're going to get to our funding model in a minute. We're not trying to fund the entirety of a church plant. We do want to get them first, second base, so that they're freed up to not just only be pursuing resources, but to get out and be a missionary, to engage and do that on the ground hard work of reaching men, women, children, evangelizing a community, to get out there and to be missionaries.
Yeah, so I hear the just even the biblical missional mandate there of why we plant churches, and
Yep.
then church planters need time, they need resources in order to do the work,
Mhm.
and funding is part of not only resourcing them for the actual cost, but also freeing up time for the work of ministry, the work of mission, especially in those early days. Josh, I'll come to you, and you have the perspective here of both the church planter, but also the work that you do with ChurchBiz. And so maybe if you want to throw your ChurchBiz hat on, even talk a little bit about what ChurchBiz is and what you do there, feel free to do that. But help us think about that a little bit. Like, how do we think about mission and money and the kingdom of God and the need for resources?
Yeah. Well, I think, one thing planters need to know and be courageous about is teaching on money and having a solid theology. It is a theological issue. And so the Bible talks a ton about money and stewardship. And so when it comes to funding, sometimes maybe that can feel like a sensitive issue to go and ask people to support the work that you're doing, or even an existing church, just regularly talking about giving. But it really is a theological issue that planters and pastors need to address because, for one, people aren't neutral on money. People have been formed by culture. People have been formed by maybe what they've seen on TBN or prosperity gospel teachings on money. And so a lot of times, especially planters, you're meeting new people. You're trying to, you don't want people to think that you've come to this place to ask for their money or whatever it is. But you're aware that there's some bad teaching on money and
Yeah.
that people are skeptical. And so I think it's important for planters to establish their own theology and then to unashamedly teach what the Bible teaches on generosity.
Mm.
And so if you're going to talk about funding, you have to talk about having a solid theology of giving. And so, don't avoid teaching, but teach on giving, and really from day one. And even it might even start with teaching yourself so you can become comfortable with asking people to support what you're doing in your church plant.
That's
So,
really good. I'll tap in on
Yep.
that for a second. My friend Craig Parrish, he was actually on a episode last season. He is executive pastor at Livingstone Church in Reno, Nevada. But I was talking with him, and he was telling me about some stuff that they were doing at their church. And he said, here's one of the things I realized is that everybody has a story with money. Pastors have a story with money, and then churches have a story with money. The way that even historically they've either talked about or not talked about money. And being able to, first and foremost, just even as a pastor, what is my story with money? What are my hangups and hiccups when it comes to money? And then how does the gospel speak to those? How does the Bible really reshape my own story with money so that I can then think well about stewardship and generosity? Yeah.
That's good. Because we came from a strand of the church that didn't want to talk about money. It was reacting to a generation before or to TBN, and said, let's not talk about money. Let's just no, we got to teach on it. It needs
Yeah.
to be taught on.
Yeah, if you don't talk about it and teach on it, then people's assumptions are going to remain unchallenged and they're going to be undiscipled in that. And so I always encourage really planters and pastors from day one, in your gathering, how are you going to focus on giving? How are you going to highlight that? Make it a part of your worship. In your discipleship, what is that going to look like? Maybe it's not, obviously every lesson is going to be about giving, but at some point in the year, you should probably address that. Even if you're starting off with just a core team of 8 to 12 people, having that core team know your theology of giving and that they can practice that and then also pass that on is important. So, yeah.
Good. So we've talked a little bit about the need for funding for the sake of the mission. Also, just biblically, I mean, we see it all over the Bible that you see in the New Testament. So the first century churches were supporting each other, get money being sent from one church to support the other church. You see people bringing their resources that they have, selling their possessions, bringing their resources to meet the needs of the church. Giving money as both worship, an act of worship, and giving money as a fuel, catalyst to mission. So certainly biblically, we know this is important, and it's important for the church, it's important for the kingdom. Josh, I'd love to hear a little bit, just kind of your experience as a church planter. So if you could go back to 2010 when you were starting to build a core team in Lubbock, to 2011 when you moved to Round Rock, and then even into 2012 as we were launching this church here. What was that experience like for you as a church planter, knowing that you needed funding and kind of trying to figure out how do we fundraise? And the Redeemer Network didn't exist yet then, so there weren't the structures, the funding model that we'll talk about in a minute. Like, just what was that experience like for you? What'd you learn? What do you take away from that season?
Yeah, we weren't quite in the Wild West of church planning. That might have been a few years before us, but it was still before there were residencies, before there were, just resources out there. There wasn't PCO giving out there that made everything easy. And so there was a lot of learning that I had to do, a lot of getting out there and figuring it out on my own. And so while Redeemer Lubbock was incredibly helpful as a sending church, there was just a ton of things I had to get out there and just figure out, from even thinking about, okay, now that I'm going to start a church, what does that mean with the government? Like, so it obviously is not going to come into my bank account. So I've got to get a bank account. Well, how do you do that? What are the steps to doing that? And then, thinking about, well, okay, now how do I ask people for support? And that led to, getting an online giving platform. I don't even remember what it was. I know it wasn't anything like what we have today.
I think I recall something about like Josh Reeves Ministries or something
yes.
like that.
Yeah.
So.
That was a mistake. I will say this. If you're setting up your church with the IRS, know that whatever name you start with, it never goes away. So even,
Okay,
don't put your name on your 501c3.
Hang on a second.
Was
you can't say this wasn't the Wild West and have Josh Reeves Ministries.
That was, I had a free CPA at that time, and that's what you get with free,
yeah, that's right.
No, not to plug ChurchBiz, but there was a free volunteer CPA, and he decided, I'm just going to, since I couldn't get him a church name yet, he just named it Josh Reeves Ministries. Yep. So that was quite fun. Don't do that. That's a little, thankfully there was enough trust with most of my donors that they could still see the, where that was going. But yeah, that was fun. So those are there's just a lot of administrative things that even need to go into before you can even start receiving support back then. And so that was part of it. And then just thankfully we had an incredibly generous sending church, Redeemer Lubbock. Should I say what they sent us with? Is that okay?
Sure,
I mean, I think they funded us $150,000 over 3 years. It was like 75, 50, and 25. And so part of my approach too was to build a 5-year budget towards self-sufficiency in the church. And so we kind of took that funding and knew what we had from there and from other supporters and made a budget to hope by year 5 to be fully self-supported. So there was a lot of just learning and figuring things out. Wasn't quite the abundance of resources that there are now, or obviously the Redeemer Network, which can help a ton in fundraising. So yeah, that was a little bit of our experience, but it was honestly, it was good for me. It was, foresee at that point that later in my career I would be helping churches with stewardship, like in ChurchBiz. So it really helped me at Redeemer and helped set us up for success, figuring all that out. And then, but it's not necessarily the path I would recommend for planters today. There's so many more resources out there. So yeah.
Yeah, well, you did such a great job early on with all of that, even with it being called Josh Reeves Ministries at first. But you did such a great job that set us up even to have such a strong foundation as we were planting this church. And we had a very generous sending church that funded well, but that's not always the case. That's not always the story. I mean, a lot of times there's, hey, I want to plant a church and I've got a vision and I'm ready to go do evangelism and I'm ready to go get after it. But, don't really have a sending church that's giving me very much money. They maybe don't have much money to give, or I don't know what to do. And, there's the old story of like church planners that are calling their grandma, asking for grandma money to help start their church. And they're calling all their relatives and all their old high school buddies and anybody that they can to try and get money. And not that that's bad. I mean, God is using not only grandma prayers, but grandma money to fund a lot of kingdom impact. So that's not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but that's not always the best way to introduce your new church to all of your friends and family and people that you're trying to reach is, hey, we need your money. And so that is the beauty of a network that is doing funding, and is that it can help a church planner start this process, start on first base, start on second base when it comes to having financial health. And so what I want to do is I want to talk now kind of about our funding model. Like, what is our funding model as the network? So Brandon, we'll come to you here. When we say we fund church multiplication, what does that mean?
Yeah. So let me add a word to what you just said. I think you said we fund church planters. It's that we fund all of them. And where that matters is, you're right. There's a lot of guys who have a vision, have and the Lord's calling them to go plant a church, but they're not coming from Redeemer Lubbock, where, praise God, they could give 150,000. There are churches who go, I'm all in, Jordan, I'm all in with you planting a church. We're losing money month over month. I can send you some people, and that's going to hurt us. And they can't send money. And so our funding model is that we have directly funded our churches. It started out at 60,000, and then it got to 70, and then 80, and then 85. And that's a direct funding. It's not a loan. We're not asking to pay back the loan. Our churches do contribute back to Redeemer Network, but it's not paying back a loan where we're tracking that. It's they've received the gift of resourcing from our churches, and then they plant, and then they participate in resourcing future church plants. So our churches give 4% of their internal giving to Redeemer Network. That goes to help fund future church plants. And then we also have people outside of the network who believe in what we're doing, who want to participate in what we're doing. We call them multipliers, who are supporting the work of Redeemer Network. And we do want them on second base. We want all of our planters on second base when they're starting down this road. And so it's not just I get money because I'm from a large church, or I don't have money because I'm from a small church. But by pooling our money together, we're collectively funding together. And then the sending church or other churches can directly support our planters as well. But our hope isn't to just fully fund a church plant where they're not having to do anything. We want kind of one bucket of the funds for our churches to come directly from the network. We want one bucket to come from the people that they're reaching and the core team they're developing. And then we want one bucket to come from them doing the hard work of fundraising outside of both groups. Fundraising for a church planter is one of the best places where they can cut their teeth on vision casting. It's one of the best places where they can let their skin thicken a little as they hear the word no from people. There's a lot of growth and good that comes from our planters fundraising. So we're not trying to take that away from them. We are just trying to get them to second base.
Yeah. What would you guys say is unique from your seat, your experiences from what we do and how we fund as a network? Not that Redeemer Network, I'm not trying to say we're exceptional or better than anyone else, but I do think our funding model is unique. And so in what ways is the Redeemer Network funding model unique from maybe other denominations or networks that are doing similar kind of work?
Yeah. Do you want to jump in on that one?
Well, I mean, I'll say from my perspective, one of the things I appreciate is it does feel like, not to pick on any denominations, but sometimes it's in funding is almost like an investment. Like, we're going to fund you here, but you're going to trickle back this kind of immediately. I see a lot of churches engaged in that. And again, it still helps those churches, but I love that with Redeemer Network, it's really, hey, we're giving you these funds to steward. We're gonna all pull our money to help plant churches, but it doesn't feel like kind of a we're giving you this to kind of trickle back kind of an investment like I've seen in some networks. And I also appreciate just knowing that if you're funding a church, let's say you're a multiplier or you're another church contributing in Redeemer Network, as I've been a part of a church that's done that for years, you know that those planters are being trained, that they're being equipped, that they're being that they're known, and it's not just a random guy coming in saying, "Hey, could you give me some money for this church plant?" They're guys that have been trained in Redeemer Network
Mhm.
churches that have a relationship, that are being assessed, that are being that it's not just your investment is going to bear fruit in good qualified men who are leading churches. So that's another thing I appreciate is just the knowing the network they have and the relationships.
I can just amen everything you just said. Our model is a little unique on a couple of fronts. One of them is that we do ask for 4% of our churches to give back to the network. That's a little higher than you would typically have in an organization like ours, and we almost never hear anybody complaining about that. It is a sacrifice for our churches, but it's a sacrifice that's a joyful sacrifice because they do know that this money is going to both the planting and renewing of churches to see the gospel multiply. We do have the shared training mechanism so that they know everybody who we're planting, everybody who we're getting behind is somebody that's been trained the way that they were trained. Um, and then it's just not alone. It's we are collectively participating in pooling our money to replant new churches.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that has been really fun to see is, like you said, at 4% does seem like a lot for, if maybe other organizations that would ask for 2% or 1%, and some people listening might not even know what that means. But it's basically requiring that the church would give to the network. And one of the things that we've done from the beginning is that we've tried to operate as lean as possible as an organization, so that that money that comes into that collective pot, if you will, every year, that as much as possible
Yes.
uh, from that pot is going to directly fund church multiplication. And we've been about that from the beginning, trying to operate really lean so that those church planting dollars are really getting to the work of church planting. And that's been really fun to see. It's something that we're committed to. It's been fun to even be able to say, hey, every single year, my church is funding church planting, whether we are actually sending a planter or
Yes.
not. My local church, Redeemer Round Rock, every single year we're funding church plants because of that mechanism. And like you said, Brandon, we have access anytime we need it. We're using it this year to a robust training program, a church planting residency that at any moment we can plug a leader into. And so it is, I think, a really unique model in that it's a model that both allows churches to give and to steward and also receive from our funding model. So anything you'd want to add on that?
Yeah, I want to double click on. We do operate as lean as is healthy to be able to serve our churches. We don't want any bloating in our organization. We have low operating cost as an organization. We want to fight to keep that way because we do want as much money as we can to be going to the training, the support, and funding of our church plants. So we do operate as lean as we can. As you can imagine, as an organization, we got some of our younger churches, or older churches, I should say, that are progressively funding more, and we continue to multiply. And as we continue to plant more churches, there's a need for more people to jump in and be multipliers with us. And so, can I plug Multiply the Mission
Yeah, go for
real
it.
fast?
Yeah.
So when this comes out, we will have either just started or about to launch a 50-day Multiply the Mission campaign. All the details on that will be loud and on our website and everywhere that you can find them when that comes. But our aim is to multiply the number of multipliers who are supporting the work monthly in the Redeemer Network so that we can continue sufficiently funding our church plants in the way that we desire to.
Yeah, good. Can you remember who it was? Somebody had a conversation recently. I don't remember if it was you. It might have been Dusty, but we're talking about an article they read that was talking about how church planters are some of the most undercapitalized people anything that would compare to church planting. We're trying to start something. You're trying to start something from nothing. Any kind of work like that, and how severely undercapitalized church planters are. So yeah, the need for more multipliers to get behind this work this kingdom work that we're doing, that we really believe in. It's good.
We really, because we want to multiply. We want to fund more churches at a greater dollar amount. We want to get that funding up to 100,000, and we want to increase the number of churches we're multiplying every year. And to do that, we need our churches to continue sacrificially giving, and we need multipliers who are investing in the work.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, maybe as we prepare to close, I was thinking that I would love for you guys to speak to two different kinds of people that perhaps could be listening. Josh, we'll start with you. Maybe first, a church planter that might be listening, or someone that is either early on in church planting or considering church planting, that might feel very under-resourced or under-equipped in regard to their finances right now. Anything that you would say or share?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, this is not going to help the guy that's already rolling, but as much as possible, try to project, raise, have support before the train starts rolling. It is harder once you get in the throes of ministry to then put on your fundraising hat.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to do that. But as much as you can, project, talk with people. If you're not gifted at administration and finance, talk with people that are, and help project a realistic budget that you can, I usually try to use 5 years. Maybe some people maybe use 4, but where you can maybe by year 5 be self-sufficient as a church. And so you want to build a budget that's realistic, that also resources your church, but is also realistic about the funds that you can raise as a church. So I want to say that, and it is normal for a church planter to feel under-resourced. If it's not money, it's kids workers. If it's not kids workers, it's staff. If it's not staff, it's quality. Volunteers. And so that's just normal and part of the grind of being a church planter. And really, you just need to, pray once a quarter, kind of evaluate where, really early on, you got to evaluate pretty quickly, because things are going to change I used to say every 6 months. They probably change once a quarter in the early days of a church plant. So just being on top of your financials, on your metrics with your people, on your growth, on am I staying faithful? You can't control the fruit, but you can stay faithful to the things that you need to be doing. Am I making the right amount of contacts with new people? Am I, spending time in prayer? All those things. To be faithful with that, to pray, to know that it's normal to feel a little bit under-resourced. And then, then just don't be afraid to pull in wise counsel from, whether that's coaching. I know one of the things you guys think you're talking about in a later podcast is the support that the network provides, but don't wait. Be aware of what's going on. When you need help, raise your hand. I would say that. And then I will say this, like, sometimes if you're feeling under-resourced and maybe you aren't as gifted in the areas of finance, if you don't get help and you don't develop a budget and you don't do some of the financial principles that help build trust amongst your donors, it's not going to get better. So you need to find people who can help you have a budget, who can help you put in some principles, because people that, we'll talk to donors in a second, I know we're going to get there, but people who are going to give and support big amounts of money, I don't know if it's that they look at it and they can tell, or they just intuitively sense it, but they can sense when you don't have your stuff together. And the more you can show that you have transparent policies, hey, that every dollar spent is accounted for, that we're following a budget and a plan, that speaks to your donors. And so make sure that you're doing that and not just saying, oh, don't blame being spirit-led or organic for taking care of what you need to take care of financially.
Yeah. So. You guys, as an organization at ChurchBiz, obviously we love and trust you guys a ton, and you do a great job with this organizationally. But Josh, I also know that you have a real heart for church planters just personally. And so if there's somebody that's listening that maybe is like, yeah, I'm kind of the guy that it's like, I've kind of want to stick my head in the sand on some of this kind of stuff. And, how could someone reach out to you, whether they need the actual service that ChurchBiz provides, or if they just, like, someone that's listening that's just like, hey, I need somebody, I need a friend to call on this and get some advice.
Well, and definitely, if you're a Redeemer Network planter, I love this network, have been around it since the beginning. And so you could email me, and you could feel free to if you know anybody's here, contact, you can email me. I'm actually on the Redeemer Network Slack. I'd be more than happy to help you at no cost, work through a budget. I mean, if you're like, hey, I want to work through a budget and create a project, like that's the kind of stuff I get excited about. You said Sammy earlier didn't think that this was exciting.
Yeah.
That's my world. But I would love to sit down with him. And a lot of times it's just, I see certain personality types that kind of like, they do put their head in the sand. It's okay to say, hey, I'm not great at this, but it's not okay to not get help.
Yeah.
And it's not going to get better by burying your head in the sand. It's going to get better by raising your hand and saying, hey, someone help me create a budget. Someone help me think through, what it I can't even think through tomorrow, but I need help thinking through a 5-year plan, or getting a online giving stuff up. So if they're in Redeemer Network, they can contact you, and then I would love to talk with them if they need help.
It's just so crazy. I mean, you're like, God is a generous God. God owns all things. God will provide resources for his people and for the work that he's called us to. Like, we know all those things, but it's so interesting. It does feel like so many pastors, they don't get into this. So many planters don't get into this because they want to do money and finance. They want to preach. They want to disciple. They want to lead. But this is so critical. And I'm just thinking about it. Like, if someone knew that they were weak on preaching, they'd be like, I got to get help. Like, all the time, like, I need help. Help me think through this. Give me some coaching. But for some reason, when it comes to money, there's so much shame that's baked in here as part of what we talked about earlier with like the story. Everyone has a story of money. And so God not only will provide the resources that you need, but he's also provided people in the body that love this stuff, that are gifted at it, and that can help. And so get help. I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody needs that. Brandon, what would you say to that person?
Yeah. So the planter who is looking at the bank account going, I just don't have the resources that I wish I had. To that person, I would say this first. You not having the resources you wish you had doesn't mean the Father doesn't love you, doesn't see you, doesn't care about you. It doesn't mean the Father's not proud of you. It doesn't mean that the Father doesn't believe in what you're doing. It doesn't mean that your church plant is a second-tier JV church plant to the church plant down the road who's just flushed with money. I'd start there. I would start with, listen, ministry is so lonely. Leadership is lonely. Church planting is uniquely lonely, or it can be. And it's so easy to look around and see not enough people, not enough resource, and go, does this even matter? And if you're looking at your account and you're going, do I even matter? I want you to hear the answer is yes. We don't have to know each other for me to tell you that the Redeemer Network is for you, believes in you. We are honored to be in this global mission of multiplying churches to see the gospel reach every man, woman, and child out there. We are honored to be a part of that with you, and the Father loves you. The second thing I would say is stay faithful. Stay faithful. Don't let a lack of resources lead you to cut corners. Cutting corners leads nowhere good. Keep doing the diligent, low to the ground, messy work of reaching and discipling men, women, and children with the gospel. Don't cut corners. And then third, and I don't want this to sound trite, but trust the Lord. The Lord will provide what you need when you need it. It may not be what you want to be provided, but the Lord knows you. He knows your church plant. He loves you. He loves your church plant. He'll provide what you need. That's what I'd say to that person.
Good. And maybe let's end with this. Someone's listening that is resourced, whether it be a church that has ample resources, more than they need. And there are churches like that out there. Or an individual that loves this network, that's part of one of our churches that has ample resources. What would you say to them about maybe a word of stewardship, even about what you mentioned earlier about multiplying the mission of really seeing the network as something compelling, strategic, to give those additional extra resources to? What would you say? Josh, we'll start with you again.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, I'm around the Redeemer Network, but I'm not an official part of it. But there are things that you give towards that you're excited to give towards, right? There's a giving out of obedience. Sure, we need to do that, but there's also things that just you see the impact it's having. And I would just advocate, like, if you're looking for a place to see dollars go towards meaningful ministry and church planting, that the Redeemer Network is gonna be a place where you can give generously, extravagantly, and watch it multiply. You can look at the history, you can look at the character of the men and the women in the network, and it's just a place where I could give my full endorsement to say, man, give where there's fire, let's keep pouring gas there. That's a good investment strategy. And a kingdom investment is in the Redeemer Network. And so if you're listening to this and considering, I would say first, if you know maybe a particular planter, you could go through the Redeemer Network or even directly to them. But let's say you don't. Let's say you don't know a planter, but you're like, I love church planting. I want to help church planters. The beauty about giving to the network is you guys doing the everyday day-to-day work, you do know the guys on the ground and you do know where funds need to
Mhm.
go. And so they can give extravagantly to you and still have a very clear and direct impact
Yeah.
on church
Yeah.
planters. And so I would say, yeah,
Yeah, well,
give
I
with
was
generosity.
just you made me think. Like, I think right now, I know we have a guy in our network right now who's planting a rural church and a part of Texas that needs resources because the people he's reaching, as his
Mhm.
church is growing, they don't have resources. In fact, they need resources to help those people that they're reaching in small town Texas.
Yep.
I know of a guy right now that will be in an Airbnb in Georgetown for our resident training who's planting an urban church, and he's got a young family and reaching young adults in urban Austin. Um, they need resources um, so they can keep reaching people. I know another a guy that two guys that will
Yep.
actually be there that are planting in a college town in Norman, Oklahoma, reaching the next generation. Who, I don't know if you know this or not, but most college students are broke. So to your point, Josh, I mean, yeah, like if someone is directly connected to a planter, yeah, just by all means, love and support, bless their socks off. But yeah, we know these guys and the good work that they're doing,
Yep.
and we're walking with them and coaching them and training them and praying for them, and there's real needs for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would say to the church or to the individual, first, there's no greater joy, uh, irrespective of how much money you have or think that you have or don't have or think you don't have. There's no greater joy than looking at the resources God has given you and seeing them as not just for you, but for the mission of God in the world. When that light bulb switches in your life, and when you pull up your Bank of America, where I'm at, or wherever bank you're at, and you look and you know, God has provided for me and my family, but not just for me and my family, but so that we can participate in the gospel getting to the nations. No greater joy than that. And my plug for one of my plugs, the one I'll give now for supporting Redeemer Network and why we want to invite the entire world to jump in to multiply the mission, is if you go to our website, uh, redeemernetwork.org, you'll find what we call our multiplication chart. It's on our website, and it shows Church 1, and it has a line to dot to Church 2, to 3, to 4, and it's got years down below. And then you see our daughter and then our granddaughter churches along the way. Every one of those dots, included on our multiplication chart, are the church plants who didn't make it. Church planting is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Not every church plant makes it, some for a variety of different reasons. But even in those church plants, every dot represents stories of lives changed by the gospel.
No doubt. Yeah.
Every single one of them. And when I sit back, like one of the things that I love to grill. I'm not really good at it. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to get better. Reed is my new sensei when it comes to grilling. But I'll sit back while I'm grilling something, my little outside chair or L-shaped thing. And one of the things I love to do is just to imagine, just to imagine 50 years down the road, a group of college kids. I came to Christ in college, and so for me, it's natural to go. They're a bunch of 20-year-olds sitting in a room, and somebody's curious. They're curious about Christianity. They're wondering who Jesus is. They've got that nagging ache in their life. They don't know what it is, and they're asking somebody their story of how they became a Christian, and their story goes back to their mom and dad. Their mom and dad's story goes back to their grandmama and granddad, who were angry and bitter and addicted. And then they met somebody who was just part of this new church plant, and they just bumped up against one of those dots. And their life was changed, but not just theirs, but their kids, their grandkids, and then the college students their grandkids went to college with. Every dot represents stories, and not just stories that existed within the time and space of that dot.
Yep.
Generations to come.
Yep. That's great, man. Really good. Great place to end. I don't know if my wife listens to this podcast. I would bet she doesn't. But if she did, I think she would be surprised. I think she would like this one.
My wife will not be listening, but I think she would love it.
Appreciate you guys. Grateful for the work that you do, your leadership of our network, Brandon, and Josh. Thankful for you, man, and the way you love and serve so many people. Good stuff today. Thanks for jumping on and joining.